I usually begin with a detailed pencil sketch on a blank canvas before starting the painting. To prevent the sketch from dissolving into the paint, I went over the pencil lines with thin burnt umber before painting the surrounding areas. For this painting, I decided to use a limited palette. For the surrounding areas, I used quinacridone red, quinacridone magenta, cadmium red light, cadmium yellow light, titanium zinc white, and ultramarine blue. I wanted to create a soft purplish pink hue in the background to depict the gentle glow of the sky during the morning sunrise. All the shades were achieved using a mixed hues: titanium zinc white, ultramarine blue, quinacridone magenta, quinacridone red, cadmium red light, and cadmium yellow light. The different shades of the sky were created by varying the amounts of each color. After nearly finishing the sky, I realized the sunlight was rising sideways to the Alps, so I decided to make some changes. I started working on the rocks the owl was standing on as it warmed itself in the morning sun. I wanted to use earthy tones for the rocks, so I added raw umber, burnt umber, raw sienna, and burnt sienna to the palette. I started with the darkest shades for the rocks by using a mixture of burnt umber and ultramarine blue. I then mixed burnt umber, ultramarine blue, raw sienna, burnt sienna, and white to create an earthy color for the rocks. For the highlights, I added raw sienna and white to the mixture. At that time, the paint was still wet, so I decided to wait a day for it to dry before adding further highlights. I wanted to adjust the sky a bit by adding more sunlight rays to make it feel as though the light was shining on the owl. I began working on the owl, starting with the eyes. I painted the pupil black, and for the rest of the eyes, I used a mixture of cadmium chartreuse, which has a hint of green, and cadmium yellow light. I wanted the first layer of the eyes to dry before adding more highlights. Next, I worked on the head and face of the owl. I created a brownish shade for the forehead by mixing ultramarine blue, burnt umber, quinacridone red, quinacridone magenta, cadmium red light, yellow, and white. For the light feather pattern on the forehead, I used titanium buff. For the highlights, I simply added more white to the mixture. For the cheeks of the owl, I used the same mixture as for the forehead but lighter. For the dark feather around the eyes, I used raw umber. I alternated between the dark and light color to make the feather stand out more. I added burnt umber to the mixture to make it darker and more brown for dark feather pattern on the wing. For the lighter feather pattern, I used medium gray. I used a wet-on-wet technique, so it didn't matter if the highlights blended a bit. I wanted the overall effect to be slightly darker since everything else was in the shade. There were many details in the feathers of the wings, so I alternated between light and dark shades while keeping the overall value low. As I worked on the body, I noticed that the left half was still in a bit of shade, so I would describe it as having a medium value. In contrast, the right half, where the sunlight hits the most, will have the highest value overall. For the lighter color feathers on the left side, which were in shade, I mixed ultramarine blue, burnt umber, white, and a bit of yellow ochre. For the lighter color feathers on the right side, I used a mixture of cadmium yellow light and white. The darker feathers on the left side have a dark brown shade, similar to the feathers on the wings. For the right side, where the light hits and the value is higher, I use raw sienna. In the legs, the shaded areas and the lit areas are clearly visible. After the rocks dried, I wanted to add some more highlights to the brighter spots. I thought a mix of yellow ochre, raw sienna, and white would be perfect for the highlight. I also added some darker areas within the highlight to make it feel more natural. For the color of the eyes, I used a mixture of cadmium chartreuse and nickel titanate yellow. I wanted to create a reflection on the pupils using a mix of Portland gray medium, ultramarine blue, and white. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more content. I wanted to create some feather texture on the body by adding a shade darker than what's already there and a lighter shade to create contrast. I decided to add some twigs to the background. I mixed raw sienna, burnt sienna, yellow ochre, and white with a bit of cadmium red light to create the highlights for the twigs. To create shading for the twigs, I simply added straight burnt umber, and I thought it looked good enough. I didn't want to make the twigs look too realistic. I just wanted to include them to complement the focal point, which were the owl I was working on. Let's take a look at the finished painting. Thank you for watching.